It is 6 o'clock, so I'll call the meeting to order. I do have one addition to the agenda. At the end, a new number 8. We do need a second executive session for the purpose of discussing personnel matter. Does anyone else have any agenda comments? Yes, John.
Oh, it's not on here then. Okay, never mind.
No comment? George?
I was wondering if we get an update with respect to the EFI and ESCO progress?
Can we do that under the superintendent's report, or?
Yep.
Okay.
Facilities
So what was the second executive session for? I'm sorry.
A personnel matter. Anything else about the agenda? Have any comment from the public? Hello, everyone.
Oh, I'm sorry, I do have one more change, so.
Sorry.
We do not have a number for the line of credit, so we'll have to extend that to next month. And that is due to the auditing firm currently making changes to the FY16 audit.
Okay. So we're gonna remove 5G. Okay. Public comment? Just some waves. Okay. Hello, everyone. All right. So we're going to start off with Emily Simmons.
Actually, I imagine she might be a little
Okay.
delayed with traffic, so how about
shall we swap those two?
We'll
Okay.
swap.
I see Kara is here. So special education costs and quality. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Kara Herbold, the Director for Student Services for the school district. Sorry if you're being blinded by everyone. So just this evening, just going to go over some changes that have occurred through the last 3 years when I started. So just finishing my 3rd year in a couple weeks. So when I started, we wanted to increase the effective practices in special ed. We wanted to improve the quality of specialized direct instruction for our students that have special needs, pre-K through 12. Build the SD's internal capacities for both academic, behavioral, social, and emotional needs of our students. Prior to, before the consolidation of special ed, coming on board, each school had their own special ed budget, each school had their own thing. Back in 2015, the state mandated consolidation of special ed, so it's allowed us to use our resources differently and to rely on a lot less contracted agencies and people to provide our resources. And of course, the overall goal was to increase meeting kids' needs, but decrease the overall cost of special education, which is very high. So what have we done in the last 3 years? We've decreased our dependence on outside agencies first thing I did was we formed a leadership team with representatives from the SPED departments and the SPED age groups from all over the district, and kind of looked and did a needs assessments. And each year we've worked on that needs assessments to get us to where we are. We hired a COTA, which is called a Certified Occupational Therapist Assistant, who works 80% to provide our OT services for students that require those needs instead of contracting that service out. We have hired 2 school psychologists, which do our evaluations and also a lot of our behavioral management within the school district, again, versus contracting that service out at a daily rate. We formed an evaluation team, which was a recommendation out of the compliance monitoring that was done from the Agency of Education, and they do all of our evaluations, grades K through 12, on students that have initial referrals for special ed services or re-evaluations for special ed services. So it provides a continuity among people looking at the child and the tests that are given, the way the tests that are given, the way they're analyzed, the recommendations that are given, and it's much more in compliant with state regulations on how the documents should be handled and done. We've been building our ability to serve students with complex behavioral needs versus outsourcing them, outsourcing the needs and or sending the students to out-of-district placements. Our numbers for out-of-district placements have drastically decreased, as well as working through other agencies to provide behavior interventionists within the schools. We've been training some of our own staff to meet those complex needs. We've expanded our co-teaching model 7 through 12, and this coming school year, FY18, we're going to be doing some co-teaching in the elementary school for the first time. We just offered another class, myself and another co-teacher through Castleton College, and had 9 elementary school folks partake in the class from this district, so we're pushing that down to some of the younger grades where it's appropriate. We've increased the professional staff, so students are receiving explicit instruction from highly trained individuals. One of the things you've probably heard throughout the last few years, if anyone's been reading the district management reports, Nate Levinson's work through the AOE, is that Vermont for many years was sometimes providing instruction to students with special needs with the least trained people, primarily support staff or paraeducators, and some of our paraeducators have wonderful training, but not all of them do. And when you have a kid with major deficits in an area and having someone work with them that doesn't have the training, maybe not even a college degree, there's a problem there, and the gap isn't being closed. So one of their recommendations throughout the state, and we took it to heart, was increasing our professional staff so kids have that explicit instruction as early as possible to try to help close those gaps. And this was done by reducing support staff. No one was riffed. It was all through attrition, whether people retired, moved, got different careers. So it was just done as a kind of a natural progression of folks. We had an independent evaluator last year, Rick Reardon, come in and review our special ed services and provided a multi-year plan on how to continually improve our services for students with special needs. And we're in the process of continuing to roll that plan out. So we've done all of this while decreasing the cost of special ed over the past 3 years, and I will show you those numbers. So,
Kara?
yes.
Can I ask questions, or would you rather?
Go ahead, go ahead.
There was you said something about co-teaching, and does that mean the special educators will be teaching with the classroom teachers?
Yes.
Is that what you mean?
So we've been doing co-teaching for quite a few years at the middle and high school, and what it is a generalist. So let's say a language arts teacher co-teaches with a special educator, and the students that is appropriate based on their IEP join that class and are receiving their instruction, their language arts instruction in this case, in that classroom. So it's modified assignments, it's modified tests. It may be a lot of small group teaching that occurs because you have 2 adults in the classroom. There may be some parallel teaching that goes on. It provides more of an equity for all students, but predominantly it's done for students with special needs.
And the teacher's time is not charged to special ed,
The generalists?
the generalist?
No.
Okay. And then the other question is, do we have, thank you for decreasing special ed costs.
You're welcome.
But I'm aware that our population has decreased significantly, obviously. I'm wondering if the same thing has happened in special ed.
So our child count stayed steady for about 3 years, about 170. And this year we saw the first real dip at 155.
Oh, no kidding.
So it's decreased, but not by a lot.
Wow.
And we're staying right around the state average. The state average is about 16.75% of students on IEPs, individual education plans, and ours is right around that state average. I think last time I looked it was 16.87, so a tiny bit higher, but not by much.
Is that a statistic that's done
Annually.
nationwide?
No, Vermont does it annually.
Mm-hmm. But the percentage of students that are special ed students, is that statistic, like, could I look at New York's percentage? And I'm just wondering how we are overall.
I haven't compared it to other states. They like to compare it on the bell curve. So if you think of the bell curve, you know that 68% in the middle is average. So it's whatever's to the left of that would be special ed. If you're looking at the bell curve, and to the right would be gifted and talented.
Okay.
So you're looking at about 13% is what it should be. But most of the states that I have seen are above that.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
One of the bullets on the previous slide said that we're doing more in-house as opposed to sending kids outside the district. Does that end up saving money, or the same, or less, or more?
In general, it saves money. It depends on the volume and where you're sending to. Just to give you an idea, out-of-district placements range anywhere from $26,000 to hundreds of thousands of dollars per child per year. depending on the placement. If you have a lot of students going to one program, it's worth looking at, if I have 6 students going to a program and that program is $75,000 per child per year plus transportation, it's worth looking at, can we build that ourselves with 1 or 2 teachers versus shipping kids out? Or if it's a student that requires something so unique that's not even in our state, that's a different conversation. Any more questions? So these are the numbers. So FY 16 to 17, we decreased our special ed budget by 5.03. And as you guys know, for FY 16, we came in $700,000 under budget. Currently, this was the budget we proposed that was voted on. 17 to 18, we decreased the special ed budget by 1%. And at present, based on the numbers from the business department and it looks like we'll be under our special ed budget by $300,000. And I forgot a zero there, I just noticed, sorry about that. And that's being conservative. Yes?
Do you happen to know what the $700,000 is as a percentage of the total budget?
Last year, if I remember right, it was 4.8 million, so I can't do the math
I
right
can't
in
do
my
that.
head, sorry, without a calculator.
Who can do that math? I know George can. Where is he?
It's about 1 in 7.
There you go.
Thank you.
12 and a half, there we go.
Department
Thank you,
head.
Nancy.
Thank you, Nancy.
And then any questions or comments? A very kind of short and sweet presentation.
So Kara, one of the questions that came up at our last board meeting was about expanding our school psychologist services. Can you explain to the board what you hope the school psychologist to accomplish in the district? What's the outcome that we're looking for?
So it's a little bit of a model shift again, and their job is different than I would say in many school districts. Their responsibilities will include assessments for initial and reevaluations, counseling, looking at conducting FBAs, functional behavioral assessments, managing behavior plans, data collection on kids that require behavior plans, coordinating that team, consulting with classroom teachers around behaviors and academic changes that need to occur, and also working with the PBIS model and how to effectively implement that at all of our schools, collect and analyze that data, and look at the overall social, emotional, behavioral functioning of our schools and where are we and what do we need to do to meet our kids where they're at. PBIS? Positive Behavioral Intervention System
Thank you.
and Support, sorry. Another acronym.
And currently, some of that work is being outsourced to the counseling center?
A lot of it's outsourced to the counseling service, and we also or haven't addressed it completely. The plates are very full and some of that fell off. So,
Okay.
yes.
I was just wondering, are you worried about losing any kind of funding for next year, or is there any?
No, I mean, the IDEA grant we get is completely funded. We've given our numbers a while ago. It looks good. The state hasn't released their reimbursement rate yet. They usually do that a little later in the year. They gave us an estimate, which was right about where we've been the last couple of years. So, knock on wood, it all looks good.
Good.
You have a question?
Are there issues or concerns or wish lists that you have for the next year, 5 years, 10 years that we should start considering as?
I'm always planning and coming up with things. You can poor Joanne, I'm always throwing ideas by her, like, what about this? What about that? So yeah, there's always things in the back of my mind that I'm thinking of, and I like to look way down. I like to look at the current triple E kiddos and say, ooh, we got this need group coming. What are we going to do when they hit middle school to make things more creative and more hands-on for them, more engaging? Because we have pockets. If you look at any sort of student enrollment, there are certain grades that have a lot more needs than other grades, and how do we meet them when they get to the middle or high school or the elementary school so they have a great learning experience that's different because they require something different. So proactive planning for some grades that are coming up. Yeah.
Kara, are you the coordinator of the educational support system?
Mm-mm.
The educational support teams?
That's done individually in each of the school, the ESC
Yeah.
teams.
So so you all in the superintendent's office, we have a policy that says you all are responsible for developing written procedures to establish those educational support systems. I'm wondering, seeing
So,
as how those are a part of,
So our
Special
school
needs,
psychologist last year rewrote the referral and rewrote the educational support team plan for students, all based on data.
Yeah.
So in that sense, yes, we did that at central office. But each school meets to discuss their own kids
Okay.
every couple of, is it every week for most schools? No, okay, so every couple of weeks. It's rotating, I think, by grade level.
okay.
So we're gonna be in compliance, John? I'm not
I
sure
don't
I
know.
understood that conversation.
Policy change?
Well, we changed the policy, and it depends on what you all need to do about there's 40 others that need procedures.
Right.
I don't know, I guess, how about we'll ask again,
Okay.
okay?
It's gonna be a summer project.
That's right, that's right.
Joanne's summer project.
The big list.
Any other questions for Kara?
I just want to go back to one more number, and you may not have the answer, but maybe you could get back to us. So the $700,000 surplus, quote, surplus, unquote, was about 12.5% of the total budget. And then the following year's budget is a decrease of about 2%? Was that what it was?
1%, decrease of 1%.
1%. So, you know, one might expect if we had an over budget of 12.5%, then we would have an under budget of 12.5% this year. Does that make sense? Or a reduction in the budget of 12.5%. Does that make sense? Do you understand what I'm saying?
I see what you're saying, but no, it did not work that
Yeah,
way.
it didn't work that way. Okay. And any particular reason why?
Because I budget worst case scenario, and when
That's
things
what
come
the
out
kids'
best case
services are.
scenario, we're really happy.
We also
Oh,
have,
that makes sense, that
variety of
makes
kids that
sense.
come in and out of the district.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And remember
know that all.
that decisions are made about our student services throughout the school year. So something that a child needed at one point in the school year may not be what he needs until the end of the school year. So there are a variety of factors, change factors that go into that final
So when
number.
we make the budget, the service plan has to be done October 15th, which is very early for the following year.
Right.
So it's a bit of a crystal ball, and then there may be some kids that we planned worst case scenario for that actually were very successful, and those costs didn't occur, which is wonderful.
Okay.
And then we've had other years where we've not seen certain things coming, or certain students moved in from other places and had to provide those services at a extensive cost.
Got it. Thank you.
Anything else? I just want to say that that is an impressive list for 3 years, so thank you very much for all
We haven't been
of
sitting around, that's
the
for
hard
sure.
work that you
Thank you. Yes. So I did see Emily come in. Hi,
I'd like
Emily.
to introduce Emily Simons from the Vermont School Boards Association. She holds the position of Director of Legal and Policy Services at the Vermont School Boards Association, and she's here to talk about the board's financial fiduciary responsibilities as well as some topics related to Robert's rules.
So I was told that there were 3 specific issues with Robert's rules that you wanted addressed. They're a little random, but I looked up the answers to how do you use and utilize a consent agenda, how do you withdraw a motion, and how do you amend a motion. Was that everybody's understanding? Because if you have another one, I brought my gold book, and we can figure it out. So the
I had a couple of questions.
okay.
Other
Why don't you give them to me now, and I'll be thinking, and then we'll
So,
go through them all at once.
do we need a motion to adjourn?
Okay.
Do we need a motion to adjourn out of executive?
Okay.
And how does an ad hoc committee fit in Robert's rules?
Okay, those are good too. So let's take it from the top. The first item is a consent agenda. And these are commonly used for items that you can address in bulk without amendment or debate on the body of issues, so that you have one motion to approve all of the items. You say, I move to approve or adopt the consent calendar, and you still vote on it. So what Robert's Rules says that a consent calendar is,
Well-used book.
it is, I inherited it from somebody else. So a consent calendar relates to matters that may be considered engross without debate or amendment, according to the old-fashioned Robert's Rules book. There's also a website that I use a lot when people call me for Robert's Rules questions. It's just Robert's Rules for Dummies. So if you're just Googling like consent agenda, I'll put in dummies after that, so this website will come up first. And it says that for most bodies, a consent calendar isn't used often, except for legislative bodies or municipal bodies like you guys that have just so much to do. So items that should go in a consent calendar are those non-controversial items that can be disposed of quickly by placing them in a list of items to be adopted all at once. So with my VSBA board, typically in the consent calendar is our minutes from the previous month, reports from committees that are of a routine nature. So our finance committee meets every month and goes through the financials as a committee, and the board doesn't, unless there's something interesting or unusual in that, the finance committee's report will be in the consent calendar. And then any forms that really require board action to approve, for instance, a lot of times the VSBA will send communications to our national counterpart, the NSBA. Our executive director, or the corollary to your superintendent, doesn't want to sign off on that themselves. They want the board to authorize it, so we'll put it in the consent calendar. People have time to look at it ahead of the meeting. If something comes up and you have a question about an item in the consent calendar, you should move to have it removed and discussed individually, but everything else that no one has any issue with, you adopt at once. We usually do the consent calendar as the last item in our meeting, but you could also do it right up front. That's just your preference. Questions about that?
Well, so I'm wondering about, say, the Community Engagement Committee. Should we, instead of having to do a report, would we just put our minutes in with all of the board stuff, and that would become part of the consent calendar?
Can't really hear you, Diane.
Boom.
Oh, sorry. So my question is about some of our committees. We do individual committee reports, but would a way to put that on a consent calendar would be to just put the minutes from those meetings ahead of time so people could look at that, and then we wouldn't necessarily have to take time to discuss it unless there was a specific issue.
Yep, I think you would ideally reformat the minutes so that it's clear that it's a report, so that you don't confuse people by thinking that this board is adopting the minutes of another committee, because obviously they couldn't do that without being there. But otherwise, as long as you label clearly, then you're good to go. So if you want to move to using a consent calendar, all you need is a motion when you first are going to vote that way, to say from here on out, let's have routine matters in the consent calendar, and they should be listed on your agenda individually, so with a header consent calendar and then a list of them, and you can move forward.
The benefit of using a consent calendar is just to save time?
Just to save time.
Okay.
And I guess another similar benefit is it does give public notice to anybody looking at your agenda that those items aren't going to be the subject of a lot of discussion and debate. So no one would show up.
Jay? Hold on, Jay.
Okay, got it.
It was connected to her computer.
All kinds of trouble.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Good job, Jay. Good job.
Wanted to vote on all these, the list of policies we had all at once. That would be different than a consent calendar. That's just like that we have consent on these 4 things, and we want to say we're just going to vote for all of that at once. That's
Yeah,
not the
you
same.
shouldn't adopt a list of policies because that is a substantive decision. A
But I
consent
mean, like,
calendar
if we were in the
is.
middle of our meeting and we just were going along and somebody made a motion to adopt the next 4 items together as a unit, as all at once, that would be the way to do something like that. It wouldn't be on a calendar like you're suggesting. That would be born separately in a special way or put on the agenda differently.
Right.
But we could
right.
still
It would
do
be-
that. It would just be the process would be a little bit different.
The process is to give warning on your agenda that all of those items are in a list together.
Okay,
You can call it a consent agenda or a consent calendar.
got it.
Okay, so there's my Robert's Rules for Dummy this dummy website, where it talks about, it doesn't go on in great detail, but that's what it has to say. So for amending or withdrawing a motion, there's another website that I wanted you to see that I really enjoy. It's called Jurassic Parliament. And this is a great discussion about when you can withdraw a motion. So with both of these questions, amending and withdrawing a motion, really the key to understand is once a motion is on the table and seconded, it doesn't belong to the proponent of the motion, it belongs to the body. So it's a group decision what to do. So withdrawing a motion is more straightforward. You know, a lot of times in debate it'll become clear to the person who had the idea that the idea doesn't have enough traction to pass, and you just want to save everybody's time and move on, or save the time for voting on that motion and move on. So you say, I'd like to ask the chair to please withdraw your amendment, and the chair can simply say, is there objection to withdrawing the amendment? If there is, you can debate and vote on whether to withdraw the amendment. Likewise, with amending a motion, I think I've been saying amendment instead of motion for the last 3 times, sorry. To amend a motion that has been offered and seconded, you need to vote on that. Sometimes there's confusion about, and this has happened on my own VSBA board, people will say, well, to the proposer of the amendment, oh, it seems like that's friendly, that's a comma, that's a different word, that's helpful, is that okay with you? And then if that person says okay, a lot of times boards will move on. But formally under Robert's rules, everyone needs to vote on even a slight amendment to a motion that's been seconded. If a motion has just been offered before the chair repeats it and gets a second, you can, in that short window of time, have a friendly amendment. If someone misspoke or if it's just not clear, someone can help you clarify your motion before it's formally on the table. Okay?
So, that just came to mind was that we might be missing a step with our motions because we don't read them back. We sort of edit them on the way. So I'm wondering if that wouldn't be a bad idea to start doing.
It's really important to have everyone hear one clear time at least what the motion is, to let people think about it and so everyone knows what they're going to be asked to be voted on. For sometimes motions
before the second, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Would be the best time to do it. Okay.
Yeah. That might slow you down a little, and if it's not a good fit, you know, it won't work. But there's no Robert's Rules police.
So an amendment does not need to be seconded by the person who made the original motion, does it?
No, it needs to, like a motion to amend a motion does need its own second.
Right, but it does not have to be.
It doesn't matter who it is.
Right.
It could be the proposer, but there's no significance of that person.
And so there's no such thing as a friendly amendment? Except
Well,
in that
there
tiny,
is-
weeny window
There
between.
is rhetorically. If you have a motion and then I'm offering a point in debate, you could go back and say, I find Emily Simmons's amendment friendly, but that doesn't move us down the road to adopting what I've moved.
What's the purpose of categorizing an amendment as either hostile or friendly? Why isn't it just an amendment?
That was what I thought was really interesting here. It says sometimes people suggest that they're hostile or friendly. An unfortunate custom has arisen where that confuses people, thinking that friendly or hostile leads you down a different path, and this is saying that's incorrect. That, again, like we said at the beginning, a motion made and seconded belongs to the group, and so you have to go through the normal group methods of voting to take action.
So it's all
Yeah,
those
I
people
like
that
this
wanna fight.
website. I have discovered it pretty recently, and it's good reading. It is.
Oh, bedtime.
Okay, so help me remember the other 2 quick.
Do we need a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
Out of regular session and executive? And
Yes, for both. For smaller boards, so if you're following Robert's rules for small boards, I think you'd have a fewer members than this. You can adjourn by consent, but for a board of this size, you need to offer, second, and vote on a motion to adjourn. I've seen boards that will vote by standing up and leaving, but that's up to your chair.
That's cool.
You do need the motion, and you need to have in your minutes who made the motion and seconded it.
And that's the same for executive.
Yes.
And then the ad hoc committee was the other question.
Okay, you'll have to tell me what an ad hoc committee means in your context, or a little more information. So you have standing committees.
Yeah.
So,
I'm not sure what standing committees means.
so do you have a policy
Right,
committee?
okay, yeah.
Do you have a finance committee? Okay, so what is one of your ad hoc committees?
We talked about it in the last meeting that I did not attend.
We
Ad
talked
hoc
about an
committee
ad
for-
hoc committee?
Do you guys
Really?
remember?
I don't remember that.
We may have an ad hoc committee, who
There it is,
was
performance contract,
participating.
ad hoc committee.
Oh, performance contract, also who was participating in the,
School councils?
superintendent's evaluation
Oh, yeah.
with the
So
SD board.
So there's no entry of ad hoc committee in Robert's rules, so it sounds like and that's fine to call it that. Under Robert's rules, all committees are treated the same way. In school board world, there tend to be the 3 or 4 common flavors of committee that every school board has every year. So I call those standing committees because they're sort of permanent. So all committees need to follow the same rule. They need to have a clear charge from the board. They need to have clear members that the board voted to, say these will be the members, even if it's just the name of a position instead of the name of a person. The committee needs in its charge to know what its job is in relation to the board. So is it just to report back the answer to a question? Is it to complete a task and report the completion of the task back to the board? Things like that. And any committee that this board sets up needs to follow all the same rules with the open meeting law as the board itself.
Okay.
Yeah, so the work of this is just Emily Simmons' advice. A lot of times you'll want to get something done more quickly in an ad hoc committee setting than you could do at the board with all the formalities. You're still going to have to warn your meetings, take minutes, do all the same things. So sometimes I encourage boards, if there's work that needs to be done offline and you have a point person who can just physically do the reading or watch a television program and report back, just let one person or 2 people do that without forming a committee.
So you delegate to some volunteer. I mean, and
So they shouldn't be deciding anything. It's just work. It's
Right.
time.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, because as long as it's not a majority of the board, a subset of the board can
No.
not decide, but gather information and report back?
If you formalize a group to work on behalf of the board, it doesn't matter if that group doesn't include a quorum of the board itself. You've created a subdivision of the board, which the open meeting law speaks to subdivisions of public bodies as well.
So they can still do
it's-
the work, they're just subject to open meeting law.
Yeah.
Then
And
when
then
do
we have to
not-
vote them in too, is that what you said? We have to, as a
Yeah.
one unit, vote that little committee to do X, Y, and Z, which I don't think, did we do that before?
no, I think historically, not this board, but other school boards in this area have taken ad hoc committees as, when we have some work that needs to get done and it only needs 1 or 2 people, we push it off to 1 or 2 people, and compliance to Robert's rules in those situations may be.
Yeah, I think if you're going to cede authority that this board has to a subset, you need to treat it as a committee with all the formalities. If it's just something like, we don't have the time here, is someone willing to take on this mental task for us? Is a lot of times it's going to be reading lengthy reports or calling someone to get information, you should just let one person do that. They're gonna report everything they know back at the appropriate time. You don't need a committee.
So when can I actually work with someone else when it's not a committee or not gonna fall into open rules?
When you've decided that you want to, you as a person, the board didn't decide with its authority that you were gonna do that.
Okay, so if I was tasked with something, say, to make phone calls and to gather information, and I knew someone else on the board that might be able to help me with that, I could call them and ask them for help with that, and that would be okay.
You are still a human being, even though you're on the school board. So yes, you can still. I know it gets so scary when you realize your obligations to be transparent and to hold to the open meeting law. But sometimes I have to remind people, you can still call your friend on the phone, even though you're both on the school board, unless you're on a 3-member school board, which we still have some of those in the state.
3-member committee.
Makes it really hard. Yeah. Okay.
I have
Thank
one
you.
last question about the consent calendar thing. So do those items on the consent calendar change from month to month? Are they standard for the year, or like, do we make that item list up as a board?
No,
and-
they can change from month to month.
Okay.
That's gonna be up to your chair and your superintendent, what seems appropriate to them. And then at any point, if something doesn't seem like it's that cut and dried, you can ask to have it moved off of the consent agenda. Very easy. Okay, so I have some slides that are not gonna take long about your fiduciary duties and your role in financial oversight. So I believe some of you saw this presentation last summer from Nicole Mace. So we'll go through it quickly and we'll take time for questions as needed. So the board has a fiduciary responsibility for the oversight of the school district, and that duty is to the public, or think of it as to the taxpayers or as the citizens. You're the representatives of the community when it comes to education. So you should take that responsibility very seriously, especially when it comes to finances and the financial resources of the district. So you should create a culture that assures focused and responsible management of the resources within the district. One way to do that is to establish policy related to budgeting and financial oversight, which will lead you to proposing a budget and assuring that the electorate approves of the budget. All year long, you'll assure adequate internal controls are in place and that you are conducting your financial monitoring role related to those controls, and that when it comes up once a year that you are attentive and you're a good, intelligent consumer of your annual audit.
If I may, the conduct the financial monitoring,
We're gonna get to that in a little more detail.
okay?
So maybe I'll satisfy you as we go along. If not, let me know.
Yeah, and adequate internal controls.
That too.
Thank you.
So, starting with your overall management role. One of the most important things is just to be present, to pay attention. We all know that failure to do so can undermine your mission, and really, whilst are you here doing other things if you're totally undermined by less than proper management. But the thing with the first bullet that I know is that it can be intimidating, especially if you're new on the board, to receive those financial documents. So just being aware that if you have a question, somebody else might have the same question, and you might all be a little gun-shy about finances, because it's not probably why you got on the school board, to talk about balance sheets. So that's okay. If at any point it seems like you're getting a lot of questions, you might want to have an in-depth conversation with your business manager or whoever your superintendent thinks is appropriate. You might need a little financial boot camp every couple of years, and that's fine too. Just enough to let you know that you're checked in to the reports that you're getting and you know how to ask the smart questions. Because the school board has what we call the 3 Ds, the duty of care, the duty of loyalty, and the duty of obedience to the school district upholding its mission. So the duty of care means that the school board is acting in good faith and exercising reasonable care and due diligence, so that you're careful. The duty of loyalty means that you all avoid conflicts of interest and that you act in good faith with the greater interest of the institution, the school district, in mind. And then the duty of obedience means that you ensure the institution's resources are targeted at fulfillment of the institution's mission. So those sort of cover the waterfront of why we have school boards. If you think about it, we need to make sure that these resources are going to the right place in the proper way. So one good way to do that is to have policies. I've heard you guys talk about those already. The VSBA has a model policy on financial management. It's coded F20 on our website. It does a couple of things. It grants authority to the superintendent, as does the law, to spend dollars on behalf of the district. Talks about flow of information from the administration to the board, and the doctrine of no surprises, that goes both ways, that you have good communication about the finances of the district. It establishes some minimum financial reporting that will just keep you on track all year long to get regular reports. A good policy has a system of appropriate internal controls, which includes clarity on approving orders for payment from the school district, provides for an annual report, and provides for asset protection. So there was a question about internal control, and I think of that when it comes to approving orders, or some people call them warrants. Raise your hand, this is just a quiz, if you are confident that you know how in this school district payment for funds are approved. It's really hard. It's really hard. I dread getting these consult questions in my job because it's really complicated. There's more than one way there's more than one legal and proper way to do this. It's just what works for your system, and communication back and forth from the administration. This is how we do it. This is how you know that things are going as they should, and then the board holding up their end and asking those questions. So most boards have a treasurer who's not a member of the school board. You're not supposed to be under law, who's ultimately responsible. That's usually your business manager for actually paying money out of district funds. You guys don't check every single one of those. On a quarterly or annual basis, you look over all of them and say, yeah, we budgeted for all of that. Yeah, the money came out properly to the place that we said it was going. Okay. So it can get really complicated and really scary, but it's just setting up a system and following it.
We have a very good treasurer that reads every single check request and follows through to make sure that there is a backup PO. He's our financial watchdog,
Who's your treasurer?
Craig Burdick.
Is a member of the administration?
No.
It's actually a
He's
former
separately
business
elected.
manager.
And you selected him. Good. Because I had another trick question for you. I was going to say, okay, who here is the treasurer? And see if anybody raised their hand, because it's not supposed to be a school board member. So you guys are doing great. Okay. So
Can I ask a question about
Sure.
the audit? Because I went to a presentation that Harry Frank did, and he said that the auditor is supposed to present to the board.
yes. So let me see if I have a slide about that.
Was
They
that
do.
the SU board?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So that
So
would be us
my
next year.
last slide goes into more detail about the audit, so you come back to me when we get there. Okay, so you need to propose a budget. Your budget should be a part of your annual process of planning for the district and reflect your priorities. You can, as a board, establish broad parameters that will be reflected in your budget, such as one fiscal goal for the year, like your ratios, or overall growth or non-growth of the budget. Of course, you know that's a process of working back and forth with your administrators, and that the board's not ever going to be micromanaging line items in the budget, but thinking in those broad strokes of accountability. And also that you are sure to have community input on the budget before it's really in those final line item stages to early on when you're thinking about your priorities for this budget. Engage the community so that you can build that feedback into your entire process. And then if you do that ahead of the district meeting, you'll be sure to have strong support for your budget. Okay, this is more about internal controls. To speak totally non-technically, internal controls are just checks and balances that you have with the administration that just prevents basically theft and to allow errors to be found and corrected. So, like we said earlier, no two systems are going to do it exactly the same. But when you find something that works for you, you should make sure that it's standardized and communicated and monitored. So the purpose of financial controls are to safeguard your assets and to ensure reliability of accounting. And like it says above, you need to reduce errors and irregularities. So this is sort of, internal controls are a system of reporting is how I think about it, that gives the board the very important opportunity to say, this doesn't look quite right, this isn't adding up to me, I need to ask some more detailed questions, or, a very conscious look and great, this is what we said that we were gonna have, I see right here that we followed through, and then you can approve that report. So, 3 important tasks to establish internal controls is to ask your administration, what is our practice? How does this work with all of the things that we need to get done as a district? And then hold them accountable to that, right? So you shouldn't have the board saying, we want to see X, Y, and Z this month, then we're going to have all these questions. It should be more regular and agreed upon between the board and the administration what control you're going to have. Then here's the system to approve orders, which I think you guys are probably going to follow up on to talk about how you do that. And then one good thing is assure that your administrators have completed the annual checklist. So this is a really good tool that actually is required by state law. In Title 16, the law says that every year the superintendent or designee needs to provide the SU board or the SD board with a copy of the internal controls checklist. So I brought a copy of a blank internal control checklist with me. This is something that was developed 3 or 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, by the Vermont State Auditor in consultation with the VSBA and the VLCT. There was a process to make a really comprehensive checklist that would work for every municipality in Vermont. It's not just school districts. So I can actually leave this with you guys and pass it around. It says,
Emily, just for your information, it is actually on the website now. We do it annually. It's with the December agenda and minutes, if the individual boards would like to see how it was reported out last year.
so you guys are really on top of it then.
The only
That's
problem with it is when they print it, you need a magnifying glass.
No, you can see mine right there.
Yeah, no, yours is fine.
Mine's great. I printed it today. Okay, so anyways, it's four front and back pages. The thing to emphasize about this is that as a school board member, you're not gonna know all of this information yourself, right? This is a report of yes or no, this has been done or this hasn't been done from your experts, right? So basically, I think the way you're supposed to read this is if you have a lot of yeses, you're in good shape. If you have a lot of no's or a lot more no's than you had last year, you need to ask some questions about how are we doing overall in the area.
Is that normally something that's completed by the business manager or the treasurer or?
I believe it's usually completed by the business manager with the superintendent. But the superintendent could designate any person.
I have another question. Could you go back one slide? What is an order?
An order is sometimes more like your select board might call it a warrant. It's the authority to draw resources from the municipality. So it's a check.
Okay.
It's very old-fashioned, sort of, to call it a warrant, but a lot of places still do. Okay? And then you're gonna conduct your regular financial monitoring. So this is just your high-level oversight, looking back to the budget that you created for the year to make sure that you're on track. So you want to be reviewing, I think we suggest quarterly actuals compared to what you budgeted in your broad categories of your budget, not your line items. And be able to know or have the opportunity to ask about major variances or a major downward trend that starts to put you in trouble. And then check in with your administrators to make sure that those concerns are being addressed. And then probably remember next year for the budget if you need to do something different if you got on a bad trend. Okay, and here's our discussion of the annual audit. First thing to do is understand, oh, sorry.
Does it have to be an annual audit? I thought at one point I read you only had to do one every 3 years.
I think I'll have to email you because my gut feeling is that you're required to have an annual audit by law.
We have to, but the Agency of Ed requires it.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Okay.
So maybe regulation, maybe not statute, but yeah. I
Also,
think
the
we,
federal single audit.
Federal single audit is required as well.
It's just required,
Yep.
so we'd have to hire
Experts.
them for that anyway.
You could be in a deep, dark hole after 3 years.
I imagine so, especially around here where y'all are
Think about
making
that,
so
would
many
we?
changes.
Huh?
So, when you know that the audit is coming up, you might want to make sure that you're educated about the purpose of the audit, right? It varies from place to place, but generally an audit is to give you the sort of prognosis of health of the system and its internal controls. So the audit may or may not do what you're expecting, and to be a good consumer, you should know, first of all, what's my role here? What is this audit doing for us?
But the auditors don't speak English.
You have to make them sometimes. So you'll get the auditor's report. So you'll get their letter first that says, like, you're in good shape or you're not. And then their opinion and management discussion and analysis. So they'll break down in more detail the different layers of the audit that they did. And that's a letter that's addressed to the board. So that's for you to read. And if you want to know more detail about that, if you have questions or something is not clear or it's concerning to you, it's a good practice to invite the auditor to come and speak with the board about the process for the audit and their results, or what they see as the highlights. I know several auditors who speak English. Our VSBA auditor is fabulous. I love when she comes to our board meetings. But if they're not, they're working for you. So if your auditor is not communicating with you in a way that you feel like you're getting the full story, ask more questions. Ask them to be real with you. They're your, you employ them, so they're working for you.
One of the items in the contract that we offer them now is that they have to make a physical report to our meeting.
They have to show up?
Yep.
Good. Well, you should make sure that you get their report ahead of that meeting so that you have time to digest it, have time to ask your cousin who's an accountant about it, and then come with questions.
We have our own accountant right on staff here.
Excellent.
I have a question. We've run into issues in the past with the timing of the audit. The auditors can be slow sometimes. And then, once you're in their grasp, there's not much you can do to force them to issue an audit faster than they want to necessarily. In other words, in time for town meeting and that sort of thing. What kind of recourse do we have in that kind of a situation?
I'm not sure. It sounds like you have a contract with your auditor.
We do.
But it probably doesn't say, I imagine, that they'll complete it.
It does specify a date that they have to provide us with an audit, but like in this particular year, we have had an audit and then an adjustment and then another adjustment. And I think we're on the third adjustment now, aren't we? So we don't have a final audit in our hands as of yet, but there's been reports made to the state and the feds that have to be made. It's just that until we get all the Ts crossed and the Is dotted, we don't have the report in
The
our hand.
final report. Well, in terms of feeling like you're rushed for town meeting, and it sounds like that's happening pretty much every year, that you don't have it by the beginning
It
of
used
March.
to, I mean, things have gotten better.
Well, you
but-
don't. It's great practice. That's a wonderful piece of information to have at town meeting. But if you don't have it at town meeting, there's other ways to report to your community about the fiscal health of the district, right? Your quarterly financial reports, your budget from last year compared to where you ended up in the budget this year. So you don't have to get so hung up on that for your full community. And then it's public once you're done with it. Right? Yeah. Okay. I'm out of time.
Thank you, Emily.
Thank you.
Thanks for finding this word for me.
So, that brings us up to the superintendent's report, which,
So I wanted to let the board know that the work plan is a work in progress. It is in a Google Doc, so you will not get necessarily a message when it gets updated, but just know it is getting updated. Recently, we put on that work plan the dates and the months for the financial reports and when they're due. The idea is that the business manager will include it in an incidental report, what report was submitted, when it was submitted, so that you can ask questions when it comes up that month. I have not included the ways in which the superintendent is going to report out on policy for those requirements. That's a work in progress, and I'll be working on that between now and the summer. In terms of George's question around the performance contract, we've actually had EEI visit the high school and has scheduled visits for the 3 elementary schools, but has not completed that at this point. When they come back into town, I'm going to have them meet with the new Director of Buildings and Grounds so they can make a connection with him and get his involvement in the process.
Did they, when they visit the high school, was that to actually do an audit or an overview?
Yes.
Or they did,
Yes.
so they've had the, okay.
Yes.
So Joanne, what I'm starting to understand about the work plan, it's really kind of like our strategic plan. They're kind of one and the same. There's just different language. Because you have community engagement on here, you have those strands. So one of my questions is, having at some point, and I understand you say this is a work in progress, so I'm not calling this out as an omission or anything, but time for us to take a look at student results at some point
Yes.
throughout the year.
Yes.
That would be something that would be put into here.
Yes, absolutely. Yep. And
that's probably one of the policies that will be coming up, that'll be integrated into that.
Okay.
And we'll be doing some more of that work at the retreat this summer. You know, what is it that's going to be on the board's plate? And we will integrate that into the work plan, including how you need to be informed of the student outcomes and results.
So in terms of community engagement, we would, as a committee, need to kind of talk about what the year looks like and then give that feedback to you, and then some of those bullets could be put on.
Does anyone know how to turn this off, because I can't hear?
Yeah, just hit the power button twice.
Oh, hit it twice.
Thank you.
Once didn't work, so. All right. Any other questions for Joanne with that? And everyone knows that the work plan is on the Google Drive, which you can access, and as it's updated, it's changed there. So when you go to it, it will look different than the last time if there've been changes made. Right?
Does everybody know how to get to the Google Drive?
No.
Do you want to know?
Well, I think we'll deal with that when we get the
I mean, it's-
Chromebooks, because then everyone will have the same platform, and it'll be a little bit easier
We're
to
gonna take some.
explain. Okay, we also had principals' reports. If there were any questions or comments on any of those. If
We
not,
don't
yes?
have any principals.
Well, actually, we have a couple, but the idea is that I would take questions
Right.
back. I didn't want to engage in that discussion. I'd be happy to answer the questions for next month.
Oh, for what?
I would be happy to take the questions back to have the principals answer if
okay.
there are questions about their incidental reports.
Did you? No.
No big deal.
I have some
Yes.
comments, questions. I mean, the high school, I stopped and saw the capstone projects, they were amazing. I only went through 2 rooms. They were just, I mean, the work our children are doing is unbelievable. It's mind-blowing. And the topics that they give a darn about, I mean, I took a picture of one of the, so that they have to write a paper, they have to do research, they have to write a paper, and then they have to do a presentation. And they have to do a physical product. And this one physical product, that's what the exposition was. So the one physical product was 2 outlines, a woman and a man, and it was sex, I think the title was Sexism in the United States, and they were outlines, but the inside of the person were pennies. And talking about the value of a man, which was much bigger in comparison to the value of the woman. It was really mind-blowing. I thought it was awesome. As far as the VUES, there was some damage to the field. It was fixed by the rescue squad. What was that? Just out of curiosity. I just wondered what happened.
I don't know, but
believe
just back
somebody-
to Lori's point and Diana's previously, when we take a look at evidence of student outcomes, Capstone and the presentation around PBGRs are really good examples of our student learning. So it's going to go beyond just the metrics of how do we do on SBACs or local assessments, but how did the students really demonstrate what they've learned?
Which is why it's great that we get all those notices now from all the schools, so we can show up when we have
Absolutely.
time.
Exactly. I just
Matt
want.
can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think somebody got injured on the field. The ambulance came out, got stuck, had to be towed out.
Thanks, Mark.
Okay.
And by the time all of that happened, there was some damage to the field.
I wanted to compliment Matt on, the very first thing he talks about is his district art festival, and I just think that's awesome. I'm wondering what Starbase is?
It's a program that the students participate in from the National Guard.
The 5th grade goes up once a week for 4 weeks, and then the folks from there come here and they shoot off rockets. And it's all STEM learning up there. It's
And all the other
fantastic.
kids come and watch them shoot off the rockets. It's
Oh,
It's a
Sounds
fabulous,
cool.
it's a
Awesome.
fantastic
Yeah.
program.
sounds
Yeah.
awesome. It's cool to hear that they're participating in Green Up Day. I really like that. Most of the rest of those are just compliments. I'm wondering about Ferrisburg's enrollment number. Do we, both Addison and VUAS gave us enrollment numbers, and I was wondering, I mean, we can just, if you don't mind asking her to include it the next time?
We'll
Just
be
not-
happy to do that.
Not a bad idea.
Yep.
And I think, I was gonna ask Travis if one of his goals was to make sure that the teachers were using Google tools, and I just wondered how that was going. And then I had another question with that. And, the Wild Center, does anybody know where that is? Addison? It's Addison Center?
No, it's over in New York.
It's in New York State, yes.
Okay.
Tupper Lake? Thank you. Tupper Lake, thank you.
Tupper Lake,
Remember.
okay,
It's
thanks.
a great place.
Is it?
I'm a member.
Are you?
Yeah.
That's
We've
cool.
been members for 2 years now.
I love that. And it's sponsored by the PTA, which I think is awesome. And then I just was wondering, does anybody know what time the step-up is, the 6th grade step-up is in Addison?
6 o'clock.
It's at 6 PM?
Yes.
All
Oh,
right, so-
and Addison is gonna have an after-school program.
Yes.
Oh, my gosh. We talked about that when my kids were little. That's
It's
really
gonna
awesome.
happen.
I'm so glad to hear that. Very cool. Thank you. That's it.
Great.
Thank you.
I just want
So-
to add one thing. I was able to attend the capstone too. I just went to one session and I was really blown away with just how articulate the students were and how passionate about their subjects and their product. And one thing I really noticed too is that each of the students I saw, I just had such a great sense that the teachers had spent so much time supporting their process over the course of however long it took them to get up there and talk in front of everybody. And That was really great to see. It was very evident. And one student had like kind of a coping technique that clearly she had worked out with some of the staff, and they were just great, so.
And everybody gets up,
Yeah, they did.
despite huge fears. I talked to 2 kids that were like, oh my God, I'm so sick.
Anyway, yeah, it was great to see.
Well, it is nice to get those principal reports and hear about all the fantastic things that are happening. So, thank you. All right, so the board committees, community engagement, you have some
Okay.
news?
So, the committee felt that we should roll out the vision statement in the fall, that teachers are just, they're getting towards the end of the year, and to talk about the new vision statement would make more sense to roll it out. We talked about how to do that, and Christina talked about maybe making a brochure that could be in the town offices, and anyway, so we were brainstorming what to do about that. We reviewed the Safe Schools statement and made just a couple of little tiny changes to that. Pretty much it's exactly the way it was when we brought it up at the last meeting. And that the Safe Schools statements also could possibly be a flyer. It needed to go in every single school. It should be sent out now. It should be in each of the newsletters, posted on the website and in the town clerk's offices.
I'm sorry, Diana, I'm not following. Are you talking about the vision right now?
No, I'm talking about the Safe School statement, which
Oh,
we brought up
thank you.
at the
Okay.
last meeting.
Yep.
Was that in?
Yes, we're gonna adopt it tonight.
Yeah.
Or it's on
Yeah,
here.
it's C, 5C.
So,
And there was a little bit of confusion about a mission statement and a vision statement that came up for the staff to work on. I think I sent Joanne and you an email, and I think one of the teachers on the committee actually brought it up and said, wait a minute, this isn't our vision statement, what's this about? But it was, can you just explain what that was?
Sure, I mean, and each school had created something previously at different times of the evolution of the school, but each of the schools has their own kind of unique statement that represents what they value. And the feedback that I've gotten is that really should not be removed, because it would be, I think for some, seen as not valuing some of the work that had been previously done. And I think more recently, it was probably Virginia Union High School as the most recent one, but that we should find a way to connect the board's work and what is existing already in the school. And I think that when I look at those statements, there are a lot of similarities.
and just to clarify, the vision that was crafted by the community engagement group is taking in feedback from the community, from the teachers, from all sorts of groups. So it's not like they just wrote it.
Is this the,
Because what it says here, the vision for the next 5 years of our district is using a personalized learning approach within a multi-tiered system of supports in order for all children to succeed. And I think our understanding of a vision is it's not about the how.
Yeah, I don't know where that came from.
It's, yeah. So I think the committee was just concerned that they needed to match. And I did tell the committee what we had talked about at the last meeting was that each school would have their own individual mission statement, but that it needed to mesh. And the feedback that I got from some of the teachers, that we got from some of the teachers, was that they felt that each school would need help with how to do that.
Yeah, and we're waiting to get copies of each school's mission statement, right? So that was another thing we were
Right.
waiting on.
And I don't think I have that in our notes, so will you remind me of that?
Yeah.
Okay. And then we reviewed the policy statement. Kind of boilerplate one and just spruced it up a little bit.
So what are you guys thinking for the future? Do you,
So
Do
we're
you
gonna
wanna
brainstorm
take-
next month. That's what I really
Okay.
wanted to do this month, but we're gonna brainstorm in June, and then we are probably not gonna meet in July and start meeting again in August on Thursdays.
and I know at one point, Joanne, that we had talked about coming up with some, like a list of some topics that that the community engagement group might take to get public feedback on,
Mhm.
so. Cool, thank you.
Yeah.
John, policy.
We met on the 17th, and we don't have a plan to meet again, because we're hoping that we've completed our goal for the year. But we'll see how that goes in a little bit. But, I mean, one thing that we'll be talking about, though, that we don't necessarily have to meet, is the work plan and how that's gonna shape up. So,
And then do you think in the next school year that we should start recycling back through those policies, or do we have a little bit of
we need to figure out
time?
what the work plan is.
Mhm.
That's all part of the retreat. The board setting some goals
Yeah.
and looking at that work plan and
Okay.
what types of things, either through the Community Engagement Committee or Policy Committee, that we need to do next.
Perfect. Cool. Negotiations?
I see that we're on here for an executive session later on.
Yeah, but is there anything you can share in open session? Just
we
meetings
started-
that happened and,
We've had 2 meetings with the support staff, and we're, I think, in a very good place. I think we're farther along in 2 meetings with them than we are now with the teachers. And we spent 27 and a half hours with them. And I can't explain why that is.
so
Things are going well with the support staff.
upcoming meetings?
We're waiting for the union to agree to the mediator's date for a mediation session. We have agreed, but the
Okay.
UNICEF director
So the
has
date's not set
not
yet.
said anything yet.
And another meeting with support staff?
14th?
June 14th.
Facilities Committee. Who's taking that one?
Tom is on here.
Oh, right, Tom sent me an email, but
He did.
but he also said you had the information, but do you want me to?
Go for it. I don't think he sent me that email, but
Okay,
maybe he did.
well, I think basically it was just that,
We were working
some
on the
of you
charge.
had
or-
connected
or-
to start thinking about a charge.
Yeah.
And we're gonna use the current high school facilities committee charge as a basis, and then connect with the building and grounds supervisor, or, sorry, whatever, director of
Buildings, Grounds, and Safety.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The
Yeah,
director
he-
of building, grounds, and safety.
And Tom did send the charge around and ask for comment, and
Yeah,
took me about a week, but I did send some comments back.
and I did too.
Okay.
with-
Heard
yeah.
anything since, so.
All right,
So
so
I
things
think
are moving,
He's out of
and-
town. When he gets back, we're gonna all meet, and then maybe at some point meet the new director. And I know I had sent you an email about more information.
Okay, so maybe not even at the next meeting, we may not adopt a charge, because that's still in June, that's in June. So we may have to wait, okay.
Sorry, this may be out of turn, but when's the new director starting?
That'll come up under new hires.
Okay.
Suspense.
Wait for it.
And Finance Committee, you guys met.
We did. All right. Here we go. I'll save the best for last. So we met, and we think that we have, we want to report to you the ideas that we have as our charge, okay? And they involve 6 things. Are you ready? Number 1 is to create a system of monthly oversight of the bills, okay? We're gonna try to do that. To make some periodic check-in, we're not sure what that periodic means, whether it's like annually, biannually, quarterly with the treasurer, that we would be able to do that. To monitor financial reports, that is the budget to actual. I think Emily just mentioned that just a minute ago, and she said that she recommended we do that on a quarterly basis. So I wrote down quarterly after I heard that from her. Number 4 is that we both would educate ourselves about the financial system of the whole school district, and that we would also be a resource to the full board to educate you all about what we have learned about the financial system. And number 5, we will have some relationship to the audit, and we don't exactly know what that is, but we have it written down as number 5, audit. And number 6 is that we'll be a part of of providing feedback for the budget development. And that's not to usurp the full board's role, but to be a part of some conversations that might be able to facilitate that development.
You mean with the community or with the rest of
Both the
board?
community and with us as a full board. And then, so that's 6 things that I just listed there, and I'll write them down because the really good news is that I have been elected to be the clerk, and Lori has been elected to be the chair. Thank you very much.
Yay.
And so that'll be the last time that I report out about it. That's it.
Excellent. Thank you. So are you guys hoping to officially adopt that charge at the next meeting or the meeting after that?
Well, we were hoping for some feedback from the board,
Okay.
in particular about the audit and how much hands-on you guys would like us to be. Do you want us to be the communicator and then we just have one annual report? Do you want us to do the RFP? Do you want that to come to the full board? And then the other thing we wanted to ask about was, now I've totally lost it. What was the last? Oh, the budget to actual. Go ahead. Let me know what the last one is again.
The last one is about the budget development.
Thank you,
feedback.
thank you, right. Do you want us to be sort of on the forefront of that, and then we bring you what we have worked out? Or do you want to just do that all at the board level?
Okay, so these sound like questions for the retreat when we do finishing up of the work plan.
We
There we go.
could probably come up with a,
By then,
A
we will have met with
charge.
the business manager as well before the retreat, so we'll have a better idea
Well,
of
it-
interaction at that level too.
then it would probably be better to wait till after the
We don't know
retreat to
yet.
come up with a charge.
That's true, we didn't do that. I guess we'll do that down here. Okay,
We gotta do
Okay.
great, thank you very much. Okay, that's it from board reports, right? So we're moving on to action items. So I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the April 26th meeting.
So moved.
Second.
I'm sorry, who?
Move, Chris seconds. Any questions, comments, edits?
I have a question.
Yes.
So on page 2 of 4, the business manager's report, you know, so I wasn't here, and I don't understand what happened, and these minutes don't explain anything to me. And because it's such a particular, I mean, we're talking about capital improvements fund, we've been talking about this. Can somebody explain to me that this makes sense to them? I'm very confused.
Would you like me to do
VOHS
that?
shows a fund balance of 140.
Can you?
I think so. What happened was, when we had the separate ballot items over the past 3 years for physical funds, the items passed, we thought that we had a separate allocated fund, but the money was never transferred off from the ledger from just the general into the special.
Okay.
That's the information that we received at that meeting, yes.
Okay, so,
But as an update, Laurie, you and I met with the auditor,
right,
right? And actually, those transfers were all done, with the exception of the last year at VUES, which is being done now, which is one of the reasons why we don't have those final audits in hand. And I believe that all of those funds are in as good a shape as they can be at this
Yeah.
point.
Well,
That all of those transfers have been made
Yes.
as they were supposed to be made.
and
But-
that capital improvement funds looked normal
The,
to me.
the outcome of that was that affected our surplus balance in a negative way. Because there were funds that we thought were surplus that actually were allocated, but just never got moved.
But there is still surplus enough to make the transfers. So numbers.
That's good.
So, yes, it's good. So numbers have changed, but everything, when we get these final audits, will be where it is supposed to be. That's my understanding from the conversation that we had with the auditor.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
So, just to clarify, the transfers were actually made?
Yes.
Late.
The auditor
Wait,
said
can I
that
just
most.
clarify something? It's not literally transfers.
Right.
What they're doing is they're posting journal entries.
Right.
And so we're taking this fictitious amount of cash out of the general fund and putting it into the capital improvements fund.
It's
And
just,
the
it's
audits-
just sort of saving it in another bucket.
I mean, that's exactly right. They're accounting for it in another bucket. So the capital improvement fund that I saw, that the auditors, the final VUHS, was correct as far as I was concerned.
And same with the elementary school as well.
And those journal entries just were made like this year for,
I'm not sure about the high school. The high school, I believe, yes. The elementary school, they actually were made properly at the time, with the
Even though it
exception of the
said
last one,
last time
which
they
was
weren't made.
now just
Okay.
made. Yes. So the information that's in these minutes is accurate as to what was said at the meeting, but I don't
Right.
believe it's actually accurate.
Okay, that's what I was just trying to clarify. Okay.
So can we just get that in the minutes, these minutes, just saying that particular issue, which is, this reflects what was said in the board meeting, but that the facts have changed? Okay, thank you.
Understanding of the facts have changed.
And that
Facts
too.
are always the same.
Well,
Okay.
okay.
Okay, so anyone have any edits or anything?
There's one little word missing, which
Yeah.
is stupid to probably bring out, but negotiating committee report, it says committee has reached out to the,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I had a similar one actually under the community engagement, which is committee next meeting will discuss how to,
oh, yeah.
the vision statement, so how to distribute.
Yes. Yes.
Corrections on the fly.
I know. Anything else?
Yeah, I just want to ask,
the minutes.
this is maybe been a pet peeve of mine, but our website should reflect what the board has done, and sometimes that is good, but we often have things that we are presented in the board meeting that don't necessarily make it onto the website. And I'm just looking at page 1 of 1 under the board education thing that says presentation is attached. And if I was looking at these minutes, I might want to see that. I don't know. But I just think it's really important for us to move towards being more consistent, to making sure that that kind of information is actually on the website. That make sense?
Especially if it states it on the page, that like, see this on page 8, and it's like, well,
Right.
page 8 isn't
Or even if
included.
there could be a link.
Right,
Oh, it'd be cool if there was a link.
okay. I believe that the website is also a summer project, so
Ooh, exciting.
it's gonna be a fun summer. All right, so we have a motion and a second. Are we ready to vote on the minutes? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we are up to policies. Adoption of policies. There are 9 policies up for adoption. I would love to accept a motion to adopt these 9 policies.
I'll move that we accept all of these 9 policies.
I'll second. Okay. Questions, conversation?
Yeah, I have some conversation. I have something to, I just want to bring one thing up first that was asked, and then, is that okay?
I'm not
Yes.
the
You had
chair,
your hand up
she is.
first.
John, go.
Good. So, the one question came up last time about C2, the student drugs and alcohol, and we talked about that one. but we didn't make any changes from the last time. And there was some question about the nature of regulated drugs. And it was the policy subcommittee's understanding, guided in large part by the principal of the high school, that we want to be pretty clear that a student should not have anything that they're not supposed to have. And like and that's like, unequivocal. And that, if a student is, the situation was brought up that if what if a student's bringing it in and they're bringing it to the nurse? Well, the student should have it at that time. They're taking it to the nurse, that's okay. But if they have it in the rest of the school day, I mean, those are gonna be some school level procedures and we, I think, wanna make pretty unequivocal that a student should not have what they are not supposed to have. Whether it is, whether it's marijuana or whether it is some sort of prescription drugs. So that's just the one statement about that.
So it doesn't define what that is there. Is that something that the principal would have the authority to say, you can have this and you can't have that because it's
No,
not
I think
spelled
the
out?
school, the school
The
nurse
nurse.
and through the principals, they would make those arrangements
Okay.
with students for the kinds of inhalers and things like that they might have on their person.
Got it.
I have two questions. On E21, the distribution of non-school sponsored literature,
Okay.
you deleted all of the notes. However, reading the policy, some of the notes are still
Oh, the little
there.
numbers,
Yeah.
Let me
So
go,
it's just a housekeeping thing,
just the footnotes. I think those kinds of things were things that were gonna be cleaned up when
okay?
doing the final
And
drafts, right, John? The little footnotes and stuff.
I tried to delete
Yeah.
most of those, but
yeah, not a problem. The other thing is E20, community use of school facilities.
Okay.
We are the biggest expense that our communities have. These facilities belong to them.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there is no reason why we should restrict use of these facilities. Now, I understand the way the policy is written here, that you can't have something go on that is going to interrupt a school function, because that is the primary use here. You can't have illegal things. I understand you don't want politics. But one of the exclusions here is that a company that is a business that's for profit can't come and use the school. Now, I think that if a company needs a place to meet and it is off hours, that there's no reason why the school can't be made available to them. Now, there may very well be that there has to be a charge for that, because there are things that have to happen. There has to be a person from the custodial staff here. Maybe the room has to be cleaned another time. They may use some supplies. So should be a reasonable charge. But I can't understand why we're saying that somebody couldn't use it for a purpose of that nature.
It doesn't say that.
I think,
Yeah, it does.
well, I think what it
Deny.
says, here, let me go back a little bit. If you read the policy, the choices from the VSBA, and the VSBA suggests that we can restrict all access. It's within our purview, but we're not. And so if we're not going to, then we need to have some system. Some system. And the system that we have set up essentially gives the superintendent the ability to make an application in which the superintendent could deny that for an event of a private for-profit entity. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the superintendent will or always will remove that. And so I think that that's a duly noted. There's no law like the Boy Scouts and the Boys and Girls Clubs that we are required by the U.S. Code to open our doors for. But this gives the superintendent to set a fee schedule and administer that in a manner that doesn't discriminate and protects the facilities in some way. So I don't think, I'm not sure that I think it's a good question. I don't think it does, this doesn't deny it necessarily. It just gives the superintendent the ability to deny that, could deny that.
Their discretion.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if we find that we're disagreeing with how the superintendent is determining that, we have, as a board, the right to say, we need to reevaluate how you're setting the schedule.
Right.
George, I also wanted to mention that it is abundantly clear to me that when the renovations were sold to the community for this particular building, that it was sold with the idea that this is a community school, and that we need to remain open to hosting local businesses as well as local community groups, and I'm very well aware of that, would not jeopardize any relationship in the community.
I'm good.
I have one quick question on A24.
Okay.
It's the board superintendent relationship. I was just wondering, I noticed it's all in red, so did we not have this policy in place?
We did
before?
not, in fact, A23 and A24, those policies are brand new.
Okay.
Required policies from the VSBA. And so, like,
So-
literally, they came out in January.
Okay, so this language is basically from VSBA language?
It is. I mean, we read it.
Right, I
And
just,
we like it.
yeah, I just was wondering where it came from.
Yeah, exactly.
I figured that's where it came
Yeah.
from, but, okay.
So all the model policies from the VSBA are all vetted through with an attorney, and so,
Yeah.
we know there's nothing inadvertently worded in there that could cause
Right.
legal issues.
And they're suggested from them. They're not, it's not mandated that we adopt their
It's
policies.
mandated that you have certain policies, they don't have to be worded the way their models are.
Mandated by the state.
There's some
Yeah, they're
required
required.
policies that we are required to have by
From-
statute.
Right.
And those are listed as required policies. And they're all the ones that start with a single number. So A1,
Okay.
A2, those are, we have to have those
You said required by the
by
VSBA.
state law,
so
by state
that's
law.
What confused me
Oh, I'm
earlier.
sorry. I
you
said, oh
that.
yeah, I'm sorry.
That's why I was just double checking.
It came out,
It's okay.
yeah.
Just want to
But
make
they
sure.
helped write it.
Who's requiring us to
The
have the
models
policy?
You're
from
right.
the VSBA, the
Got it.
requirement
Thank
is
you.
from the state,
Yeah.
right. Any other questions?
I got a couple.
Yes.
All right.
So we'll start with the easy one. C24, interscholastic sports.
Okay.
At the end, eligibility, boy, I'm tired. We've got student should. Does that mean there's some sort of discretion that if they're not in good disciplinary standing or not in regular attendance, they could still participate?
Should rather than must, is that?
Yeah.
I mean, I think with these kinds of things, with the interscholastic sports, the way that these are written, give the principal, in particular, the principal on interscholastic sports, the opportunity to figure out what good disciplinary standing means. But we are saying athletes should be in good disciplinary standing. Tell us what that means, and that should be the case. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm just flashing back to when I was a TA in grad school at a big school, and the football players would come in for tests if they felt like it, but they knew it didn't matter because they were going to play football.
Yeah, and that's
What
not.
happened academically was
Yeah.
irrelevant.
No, and that's not the case, and I learned something as well. The number 2 there, the principal is in charge of attendance. And so the principal, the student should be in regular attendance and should be in attendance on the day of the events unless excused by the principal. So,
And I think that's in order, what if they have an orthodontist appointment the day of? Let's give the principal some discretion to make a
Right, I
a
just,
judgment.
especially with good disciplinary standing, I was like, so. Anyway, that was I'm fine with that, I just wanted to raise it. Wellness.
Okay.
Two things. Again, I'll start with the easiest one.
What number is that?
C9.
C9.
So at the very, very last one, the definition of school day
Yeah.
starts at midnight. Midnight till 30 minutes after the official end of the school day.
Because you might serve breakfast at any time prior to school. Probably not
Yeah. I
I
midnight,
didn't know if it was a
but-
typo, I was just like.
No, yeah, seriously, that's it.
Okay. Then kind of a general,
'cause
we,
Project Grad, they come in 4 AM and have breakfast sometimes.
a
Right, so
general
if we
standing
said
with
4:30.
nutrition
Yeah.
is, we talk about the USDA's school meals nutrition standards and the Healthy Hungry Kids Act and smarter lunchrooms, all of which were kind of things that happened over the last 8 years and are currently being dismantled. Do we follow whatever is the current federal law, or do we set standards based on standards that we like?
I think that's a good question. And at the time that we went through this policy, I followed the links back to all of these places, and they're still there, okay? Now, policy may have changed from the USDA, and so, but it's still there right now, okay? So that's one thing. And number two, yeah, I think that we should make the best policy that we possibly can based on the best information that we have, whether that aligns with the federal government or not, their recommendations, not their requirements, right? We're not breaking the law here. Then I think that we should follow I think we should follow the wellness coordinator and the superintendent's recommendations, and as well as the best practices for
So
those
we're
kinds of
viewing
things.
any statutory recommendations as bare minimum.
Yeah.
And if we can do better than that, great.
It's great to exceed.
So has this this policy been passed by the wellness coordinator?
Yes, definitely. The wellness coordinator and superintendent have been with us for this whole process. Absolutely.
I have a question about in that wellness policy, we refer to the National Sexuality Education something, but that I cannot load on this Chromebook, which I thought was very interesting,
Because it's high security.
because it has the word sex in it, maybe?
don't know, Lord.
I don't know, high
Hey,
security. It was
here's
Mother
the-
Jones.
Okay.
So I want to know from Lynn, I was
Oh.
going to ask,
Well, John
Is this
probably
something-
could answer the question.
oh, okay. Is this something that is sexuality is one of my passions. I want to make sure that this is
Well, no.
Sorry.
like
Keep going, keep going,
that.
Sorry, you opened that one up,
Gender is one of my passions.
Keep going, we're
Oh
cool. We're
my
with you.
goodness
We're with you.
gracious.
It's late. I'm busy.
Wow, it's a good thing I'm not the board chair. Yes, so gender is one of my things, and this organization sounds like they kind of drive the gender issues, and I've never heard of it. I'm just inquiring as to what people think about this organization.
Well, I mean, the superintendent, I'd like Lynn to answer, but I learned as well about this, okay? And so here's the way I see all of these, and that's one of the reasons why we did keep some footnotes in here. Because the footnotes take us back basically to what the Agency of Education says about sexual health, all right? And there's a whole page about sexual health and sex education, and there's law, there's a statute about comprehensive sex education.
This
And
is in C9.
so these are all a part, these kinds of standards are the best practices that are highlighted by the Agency of Education.
So they're a standard, we could find others, but this is a reasonable standard that fits.
I'm not sure that's the feds necessarily, so much as it is an educational group, an organization of experts in this field that have made recommendations across pediatrics and other organizations that have participated in it. I'd follow those links on here. I learned an enormous amount.
Well, I tried, but Chromebook wouldn't let me.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Do it at home.
I'll do it at home.
So, John, when you mentioned Agency of Education, did you mean the Vermont agency or on the federal level?
Yeah, the
Vermont, okay.
Anything else? Okay, we do have a motion and a second to approve the 9 policies. Are we ready to?
Oh,
As just a reference, I guess I'm just looking at the drug and alcohol policy, and in one section you have crossed out the reference or the description of the, sorry, let me just grab it here. The substance abuse team.
Yeah.
But then in the procedure, you're referencing.
we took it out of the procedures. We're not ready for the procedures yet. We're not gonna pass those
Okay,
yet.
thank you, sorry.
We're gonna
That's
leave
mine.
those at this.
So that's not
Yeah.
on the table, even though that was sent out.
It was on there, you're right, and I was gonna scratch it off, but you may have gotten an earlier link that it was on there, but it's not. Yeah, good, yeah.
Yeah, no, we're looking at A23, A24, C2, C9, C22, C24, E1, E20, and E21.
Before we vote, can I ask one general question? There, just in perusing the couple that I looked at, there's several references to reports that the board is going to get, and you brought that up earlier. And also, we talk about writing procedures. Where are we gonna make sure that those reports get
Yep.
reported to us? Where's that tracking gonna happen? And also the procedures, and I suppose that would,
So the reporting back to the board, and for the ones that also need to be reported to the public or to different agencies, we are working to get a plan to have all of those listed on our work plan, so
Great.
that we know whether it's a couple sentences in Joanne's monthly write-up 1 month on one policy, or it's a report to the board from the wellness coordinator once a year, or it's, yes, I sent whatever form in to the feds, or whatever needs to happen. But each one is individual, and there's
There are
a lot of
But
them.
a lot of those show up in the annual report.
Yeah, some of them
So I
are
think
in the
we
annual
need
report.
the superintendent to help us know which ones are definitely gonna go there
Yeah,
okay,
to start.
right.
okay.
So
And then-
that
I
will
think
be
that that's
piece.
part of the work
parts
of
of
the
that.
policy committee next year.
Mhm.
And tracking procedures,
Yeah,
maybe.
to at least to learn about them.
Right.
So that we know. I mean, some of them, we wrote them to give discretion to the superintendent, but that doesn't mean we should be ignorant of what they are. We need to know them.
Right.
Oh,
So-
And the fact that they exist, right?
Yeah,
I mean, 'cause,
exactly.
you know, things happen and.
I mean, they're administrative procedures, and sometimes we just, these are things to talk about, you know, our policies are gonna show up on our website. A good question for the superintendent that she doesn't need to answer now, but for later is like, will we have administrative procedures on our website? You know, these are, I don't know, we don't have to have the answer right now, but those are questions that we should figure out next year.
So the policy committee is going to continue as an entity, okay.
I think they're taking a little break.
Oh, okay.
If we pass this, we will.
With that said, are we ready to vote?
Yes.
Hold your breath. Okay, so all in favor of adopting these 9 policies, please state aye.
All right.
Any opposition?
Take your break.
Congratulations, Policy
Thank you,
Committee.
John, for all that
This
work.
does
That was
conclude
amazing.
Our policy manual is currently complete to
Wow.
begin this school year.
That's pretty freaking awesome.
That's good.
I mean, really, that is pretty awesome.
Yes. Thank you very much for all of
Big
that work.
question.
Yes,
Does that mean that all of those approved policies are gonna be on our Chromebook next month?
Gloria and I are working on that over the summer, George.
Oh, okay.
they're not actually on the Chromebook,
yeah,
but you'll
let's
be able to access
our
them through your
transition
Chromebook, yes. But we'll get there, we'll get there.
Yes, but I think the idea that George is representing is a good one, and that is, the reason you're getting Chromebooks is that we can move into the 21st century and move away from policy manuals. There will be policy manuals in the schools, such as in the library, and accessible to the public, but for the board's purposes, you will have access to those policies online.
And the public will have access to them online
Online.
as well, as
Correct.
they did for the SU. So. Okay, well done. Next on the agenda is a motion to adopt a safe schools statement. Would someone like to make such a motion? Lori?
Do we have that?
It was sent out, it should be in, it is in the packet, isn't it?
I didn't find it in the packet.
I don't
But
think.
maybe I'm,
Oh,
is
did
it,
not make the packet, it was,
it's in page 3?
Of the
On
minutes.
page 3.
Oh, I'm sorry. I wasn't here last meeting. What,
Yep.
we had a motion and it got withdrawn? Because
So the motion was withdrawn
Yes.
because we wanted it in writing.
It's here.
Hadn't received
Okay.
This is
But
page
is-
3.
Ah, so
And
now
is
it's in
that
writing,
accurate? What's
in
on
the
it?
minutes. Got it, thank you.
What I have is what's in my minutes.
We,
So this
Don't
right
have it on
here
a separate page.
is what your statement is.
Yes.
Okay.
this is in the SD minutes from last time?
Yep.
Okay. All right, so it is as stated in the SD minutes from April 26th. But we don't yet have a motion.
I'd like to move that we accept this statement.
Did you make the motion?
Is
Did.
there a second? Okay. All right, so, it is on page 3 of the packet in italics within a quote. Does someone want to read it? Is everyone
read
read
it.
it? Are we good with it?
The superintendent and directors of the Addison Northwest School District wish to reassure the members of our community in these uncertain times. We remain committed to maintaining safe and welcoming schools regardless of race, gender, disability, national origin, documentation, religion, sexual orientation, political orientation, or family income. In addition to compliance with federal law, it is also our moral and ethical duty to protect and to provide an equitable education to all of the students who pass through the doors of our schools.
Excellent.
Are we ready to vote?
Do we need, in these uncertain times, if this is just gonna stay forever, it might not always be uncertain times. Does the sentence read fine if we just say, we wish to reassure the members of our educational community?
I mean, I think so if this was like a policy, but this is our statement, and these are about these times.
Okay.
We
Yeah.
can always change it.
I
We can
just,
revisit it.
Okay, shall we take a vote? All in favor of adopting the Safe Schools Statement as read and written? Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Well done.
Disseminate that statement?
Yes,
how?
please disseminate.
Well, I think it needs to go out in the newsletter and to the principals to begin
Yes.
with anyway.
Yes.
Is this something we can send to the?
Press release, yeah. Could we do a press release? Not that they'll pick it up, but.
I didn't know.
Skywriters.
But we could send it to them, whether they'll print it or not, who
We're
knows?
getting there. Okay, all right, so next is a motion to approve an audit firm for fiscal year 17. So what is the process for this?
So it's, the board did offer R.H.R. Smith a couple of year contract under the SU, but you're a new school district. So the administration is recommending that you maintain the same auditing firm for some consistency, at least for the next school year. And the motion would be to authorize the superintendent to offer a contract. That would be something that you as the board chair would sign, Sue, but we would create that contract and just make sure that the auditing firm is on, well, they are on board, they're already doing FY17.
I'd like to make the motion, but I wanna change it, because we got into a problem with a prior superintendent. The contract is supposed to be offered by the board to the auditing firm. And they should be reporting
That's
to us.
why I would sign it. Right.
Okay. With those provisions, I would move that we offer them the contract
From the board.
from the board.
We haven't seconded yet, so we still have a little wiggle room in here.
that
This is a
window.
one-year
For Frank.
contract.
It is.
Okay, so that motion, the motion should include that
Yes.
term as well. And do we have a cost involved with that one-year contract? Do we
That
have
was-
a cost within we're asking you to do?
That was in the proposal.
Did I miss the
Last
proposal?
year,
No, this is a carryover from the SU.
Oh, so it is to adopt the same contract that has already been
And-
adopted? Okay,
And
got it.
in reality, it actually cost us considerable more than that, because it wasn't simple. They had to go back and redo the previous auditor's work, and then they have had to make adjustments and do restatements of the audit. So I don't know what the final figure is, but I'm sure that it's well in excess of what the contract was for.
I don't have that number in front of me, George. I can
Okay.
I don't know that it was in excess. I don't know that it was well in excess. But I
Okay.
guess that depends on how you define well.
Okay.
I know that the high school had a $5,000 additional
Right.
cost.
And
I
I'm
don't
not,
know what the
I'm
other
not
schools
sure if there was any, that was the only one I heard of, so
Really?
I don't.
I think they were incredibly reasonable.
Yeah.
I think they were
recall them
incredibly
being-
generous to
right.
us.
Yep.
And that other auditor ought to have his license removed.
So we still don't have a second.
Second.
Thank you. That was Mark.
We did make a complaint to the,
We did.
Yes. Okay, so any more discussion about this audit firm, which their name is R.H.R.
Smith.
Smith? His initials. Okay, are we ready to vote? All in favor of extending the one-year contract to R.H.R. Smith as our audit firm, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Next on the agenda is a motion to designate a board member to represent us on the Hannaford Career Center Board. Before we make a motion here, we need to see if we have anyone interested in serving in this position. This is a commitment to a once-a-month meeting, which is currently being done by a member of our high school board, which will be disbanding. We need to have a member from this board to represent our interests to the Career Center and also the Career Center's interests to us. They are in the process of hiring a new superintendent. They're in the process of rewriting their bylaws. And it would be really helpful if we had a representative. There was one person who expressed interest. I don't know if that
Sort of as.
interest is still, yes,
I'm-
you were able to make the meeting.
You know, I was gonna say, if nobody else would, I would. I'm wondering if we could maybe split it? No, I don't know.
That'd be great. Can we do that?
Can we?
I don't see why we couldn't do that.
And she and I can
You
communicate
guys
and,
can communicate.
you know, we can go do
and
every other
decide
month or
which-
something like
So it
that.
is 5 o'clock, the second Wednesday of the month in Middlebury,
Okay.
Do you know when the next meeting is?
Second
the second
Wednesday.
Monday.
What's
No,
over
no,
that?
Wednesday, I'm sorry.
Wednesday.
Monday.
Second Wednesday.
Second Wednesday.
At 5,
Is that
there
what I
at the
said?
center.
Is that correct? Or is it the third Wednesday? I emailed it to all of you.
Oh.
No, I don't.
So it
know.
wouldn't be for 2 more weeks. Whatever it.
June 14th, possibly?
Yeah. All right, I did send that.
That's Flag Day.
So, with that said, I guess I would like to have a motion to nominate Christina and Lori to be our representative to the Career Center Board.
Yeah.
so moved.
Second.
All right, any more discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very, very, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Now, motion to authorize superintendent to offer contracts.
Okay, I have a number of positions I'd like to present to the board this evening. According to board policy, the authority of the board to offer contracts is with licensed staff, but because of the high-profile nature of the Director of Buildings, Grounds, and Safety, I'd like to begin with that nomination tonight. We went through an extensive interview process, a two-step interview process. There was a screening committee, and then George Lawrence and I interviewed 2 final candidates. There were 8 applicants for the position. There were 5 interviewees for the position. And the committee unanimously came down to their final candidate, which is Ken Sullivan. Ken Sullivan is an owner-operator of his own plumbing business since 2005. He has a multitude of certifications, including Vermont propane license, master plumbing license, a commercial heat pump installation license, EPA clean air HVAC technician, and he is also a silver oil installer, and I have no idea what those pieces mean, but sounds very impressive. In terms of his skill set, Ken displays that he is a systems improvement and problem solver. He builds a team. He He has a customer service focus, and he was just extremely enthusiastic about being offered the position.
Can I
Please do.
add my impressions? Yeah, I was also very impressed with Ken. His demeanor, his approach to building a team. I guess he's a former Navy guy. And I think his approach of stepping back and trying to understand the overall picture, but also, needing to know enough detail to understand how that informs the overall picture. And he seemed really open to new ideas too, which I thought was really important in energy efficiency. So.
And he's also, Gloria reminded me, he's a VUHS graduate. I also want to mention, and I do apologize to Stephanie. Stephanie joined us in that last interview because of the multitude of potential challenges at the high school. I really wanted her endorsement in the process, and so she participated with us in the end.
He's also a district parent.
Yes, he is.
Oh.
That's
Nice.
Yeah, so he lives here.
Spent about 3 hours touring the building on an unofficial tour, and it took 3 hours. So when he does the deep dive, I mean, he has a real attention to detail.
So next on the list is Laura Frangipani. Did I say that right? I did say that right, Frangipani. Laura comes to us from She's at Richford currently. She is going to be a middle school social studies teacher. And before I go on with the rest of the list, I do want to let you know that the hiring process here at the high school is quite extensive. And one of the most important steps I think that we can take is to have student involvement. Not only were our students involved in the panel of interviews, but they were also present when there were demonstration lessons. So each one of these candidates come highly recommended or endorsed, I should say, by the students who were part of the process. Next on the list is Isaac Kreisman. Isaac will take the other position as the middle school social studies teacher. Most recently, he's worked at Mount Abraham High School. Then there's William Corbett, who is going to be a replacement for Pam Taylor, thank you, our high school social studies teacher. William is currently working at Dartmouth College, and I think his not only teaching background, but his background working at a higher ed institution is really going to be advantageous for our students.
And he goes by Billy.
Thank you. Thank you. Angela Kunkel?
Angela Kunkel.
Thank you, I did say that right. Angela will be our library and media specialist. And I was in particular impressed with Angela's perspective on integrating technology in her role as a library media specialist and working side by side with teachers to develop units that integrates technology and working with our students in that regard as well. Caitlin O'Hara, who will be...
Sorry, no T,
Kaylin O'Hara, thank you, is our choral teacher. She comes to us from Montpelier High School. Extremely enthusiastic, and I think she's going to be a great addition to working with Sue O'Daniel. And then finally, Dylan Stoll is going to be the new school psychologist joining the team of Brianne Walsh and Nick DeVita, thank you.
Great. So you need a motion to...
Authorize the superintendent to offer a contract.
So moved.
Second.
Just, could you help educate me? Why are we doing, why is that, why do we need that motion?
It's in your policy, and we just passed that policy, John, that it is the board's authority to authorize the superintendent to offer a contract. In many ways, the process is done. You're hopefully never going to argue with me about it because I've gone through an extensive search. But it is your jurisdiction to say, nope, we don't like that candidate, go back to the candidate pool.
Okay,
For licensed positions.
okay.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to accept the 7 new employees. Excellent. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Oh,
Excellent.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's right. Gloria reminded me, we're still in the hiring process, so I would hope that next month we will be complete. We have some positions at the elementary school we're working on right now.
How many open positions are there still?
3 at the elementary school.
3 at all at VUES?
Yes. So far.
That's it so far, at this point, I
At
should
this
say.
point.
I don't-
Did we find,
service hires too, or is that separate?
That does not come to the board.
Okay.
There are some changes, and I'm happy to update the board about those changes, and I'm still underway with our collaborative contract. I met today with, the superintendent of Addison Northeast, but that would not come to the board.
And there was a retirement and a resignation at Addison
Correct,
Central?
yes. Shirley and Jeff.
Yeah.
And we're in the process of replacing Jeff, and I believe there's enough movement in the district to replace Shirley.
Okay.
But
And
no
that's
more
a,
resignations at this point.
and that's a custodian and a para, so those are not,
Those would not come to the board, but I certainly would give that to the board in an incidental report as information. Yeah.
Question.
yes.
There was a question earlier from someone about when Ken was gonna start.
July 1st.
Thank you.
He's actually, in effect, started. I met with him today. He met with Stephanie already. I have a meeting scheduled with him next week. He's been great. He's really kind of closing down his business and trying to pick up bits of knowledge here so he can hit the ground running.
Okay. Okay, we're skipping G for now, that will be in June, so motion to approve the superintendent's contract. Okay, so Joanne is currently serving, the first year of a 2-year wait, Joanne?
Yes.
2-year contract you have currently?
Yes,
Okay, sorry, the first year, she's completing the first year of the 2-year
Two-year
contract
contract.
with the SU.
that's correct.
And so, as we did with the auditor, we are wondering if we can roll that over and employ her again for another 1 year, or even potentially extend that and create, because it will be a new contract. Do we want to create a 1-year contract to finish out the 2 years that she's already committed to? Or would we like to offer her a new 2-year contract from the SD, is the question here. So we have options. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
I see confused looks, okay.
I would,
So, I don't know if we want to make a motion and then discuss that, or,
I don't, I guess we have to do one for sure,
right.
but I mean, I don't know, I mean,
I would move to
just to,
have this new board continue the 2-year contract, finish up 1 more year, and then we can restructure a new contract if need be.
Because this
I'll
board
s-
hasn't
I'll
been
second
involved in
that.
the evaluation.
That's
or
right.
any-
That's correct. We will this coming year.
Right,
Yes.
but
yes.
as part of that discussion, I think that
Was that an actual motion? Sorry.
yes, it
Move, but
was.
we're kind of in the window, we haven't
And I-
seconded.
And I
Said
seconded it.
Oh, did you?
Oh,
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
So,
There
I
you
didn't hear it either, so.
We
Mark
were-
made a motion to extend to,
Extend the current contract for
Right.
an additional year, or for this year.
yes,
Under
to
a new
rewrite the contract
employer.
under the SD for
Yeah.
the remaining 1 year.
Yes.
there was supposed to be an offer of a contract to you way back. I mean, that's something that's supposed to occur in January, isn't it?
I have the offer of a contract,
Yeah.
George, that's what she was saying.
She has a
Okay.
contract right now that expires in
Right.
2018.
But,
Correct.
but your new, this contract we're talking about right now is going to expire on what date?
2018.
June 30th,
1st, is it?
June
2018.
30th?
June 30th, I mean, yeah.
We haven't gotten through the evaluation process yet. No, I'm sorry, I understand. The supervisory union board has not gotten through the evaluation process yet. So, one thing that we have to do when we extend this contract is we have to make sure that in our timeline, that we start our evaluation process back far enough
Absolutely.
so that we have it completed and have had the conversation before we come to the point of needing to say yes or no with a contract.
Yes,
Okay.
agreed, yes.
But if the SU is still doing the evaluation process.
Because it's for the past year.
For the past year, but we need to let Joanne know by next January for future, is that what you're saying?
I don't, there's
This-
a date
the
that we have to
SD
notify you.
The SD does not have a superintendent right now, because
I
we're actually
understand that.
not
I
operating,
understand that.
so we need a superintendent to be hired, to be signed, you know,
Right.
have a
Right.
signed contract
Yeah.
in place before July 1st.
I'm just, but my question is, what is the SD's responsibility in terms of offering Joanne a contract
Beyond that,
beyond that?
There's-
By what's the, what are,
there's a
what are our
date.
what's our timeline?
Oh, it's in the contract, I believe,
yeah,
right?
there's a
There-
date that we have to offer her a contract, and I believe that it's in January, isn't it?
I think it's March 1st.
Yeah,
or I
Is it
remember
March?
The evaluation is
evaluation
is
needed to be
due in
completed
April.
by March 1st.
No, April 1st. It was April 1st.
April. Yeah.
So,
Her evaluation is supposed to be completed by April 1st.
right,
So I imagine that would go
Right.
along with the contract.
so we just need to make absolutely certain that we have accomplished that
Yes,
prior
I
to
agree.
the date that we have to talk about contracts.
Well, that's probably an item we bring up during retreat.
Yes.
That we make
Yep.
sure that we have that in place in August, so that we know what's going on, so that we're ready.
On
on
the
April
annual
1.
work plan.
It is April 1st, the renewal.
That's when the renewal is.
If the board
April.
fails to notify the superintendent in writing no later than April 1 of the school year prior to the termination of this agreement of the board's intent not to renew this agreement, then this agreement will, without further action, be automatically extended for an additional 1 year upon the same terms and conditions.
But it's crazy to do an evaluation after the fact, right?
Well, that's not our business right now,
I-
though.
no, I understand.
I completely agree with you, and we need to make sure that happens much earlier, yes.
Okay.
But in terms of the one that's currently underway,
So-
we can't do anything about it.
So you've got a motion and a second.
We do have a motion and a second. Do we need further information in this motion, such as salary?
It just continues.
No, the salary has been designated, but there
Yes.
are pieces in that current contract that need adjustment.
Right.
And one is the retirement benefit, and the other is the premium share of the insurance, which actually currently reflects the teacher's contribution, but is in my contract as a 90-10. In reality,
In other words,
it's,
Joanne's saying we need to reduce what we're giving her in the contract from what's currently written. So if there's no objections to
Go to an 87.5.
us doing that,
Need to reduce it?
the contract was written with 90-10, but Joanne has taken the same as the teachers, which is 88
Oh,
and a half.
87.
87 and a half, sorry.
So, I mean, some of these things are brand new, right? And I'm just, we have not had this responsibility. So let's go back here just a little bit. How many years is the contract, what's your contract for?
It's a 2-year contract.
It was a 2-year contract.
she's finishing
And we
the first
need
year.
to take over the second year, but we could, there is some benefit to saying, we're a new board with full control, and we're probably gonna need 2 years to get all of the evaluation done and all of that stuff. And so you're saying, we need the possibility is for a 2-year contract.
It's
Because
possible.
we're gonna need that 2 years to get the proper evaluation done and the things that need to happen.
I mean, maybe,
That's why you
we
brought
might
it, that's
not-
why,
we
is
might.
that why you brought it up earlier? For a 2-year?
Well, because historically, the contracts have been written for 2 years for superintendents, and so since we're rewriting a new contract, we could write it for 2 years, as has been done in the past, but we could also just take over the 1 year that's already committed. But remember, there is that line in there that if we don't tell her we don't want her back by April 1st, that it automatically renews anyway.
Okay.
Well, and that's where I'm a little confused. It sounds like we didn't do that, but it also, I guess, so that's one aspect.
Right.
Or the existing SU didn't do that.
Right.
Okay, but then also the school district is dissolving.
Right.
Right.
Okay, so does that supersede the April 1 notification? Just out of curiosity.
Well, I
Two-year
think that
contract, so
this-
the April 1 of this past year is in the middle of the contract. April 1 meant nothing this time
Yeah.
around. Next April,
it
Yeah.
means something.
it
But this
hits.
contract is between the Addison Northwest Supervisory Union and Joanne, and she needs to have a contract from us.
Yeah, I understand that part.
Right.
Well,
I
then-
guess I'm wondering if anything within that one is still valid, if it's,
It
I
won't be after
think
July,
after
June
July
30th.
July
1st,
1st.
this
It won't
will
be
not be
after
valid unless we rewrite it all with our name on there.
Then I think a better way for me
She
to
will be
understand
free.
this going forward is that our obligation to the SU is no more, and we are beginning anew. And if we're beginning anew, then we need to start as if we were beginning anew with a superintendent, and that would be a 2-year contract.
Part of the problem is that you've got a month now before this change occurs. You have to have that in place. Is there the ability of this board to get together and to rewrite a contract to do that?
So I would be willing to do that on behalf of the board, if you so wish.
I have a problem with doing that without getting any feedback of evaluation. I'm sure the evaluation is awesome, but we don't know, right? The SU has not finished their evaluation system.
Problem with doing what?
I have a problem with creating a new contract when we don't have any evaluation information for the past year or any prior information on our superintendent, except the fact that, you know.
Okay.
Will the
I
SU
would-
board be making any kind of recommendation based on the evaluation
The
to
SU
us?
board was not, she was going to be hired for 1 more year per this
Yeah.
contract, regardless of what the evaluation is. I mean, perhaps there'd be a plan put in place, I mean, if there was an issue or whatever, but the contract is valid through June 30th, 2018.
Let me reword that. Are they gonna give us a report on the evaluation? Not
We
even
see the
really.
evaluation when it's done.
I'm sure that we will be able to see the evaluation upon request when it is
The-
done, yeah.
The
I don't know.
part of the problem is that we're coming up on the last meeting of that board.
Yeah.
And they haven't finished the evaluation, and I don't see as they're gonna get it done by that time. So,
But the question at hand is really that we need to have this,
Yes.
I mean, unless we want us to do a superintendent search and find someone else.
No, I mean,
We
we
really
have a
we
motion
really
on the
need to have this
floor.
done. So what the
I don't
SU
think
board is
that that's
doing in
the
terms of the
issue.
evaluation is an issue, but it's not really pertinent to what we need to make happen right now, which is renew this contract
And-
at minimum for 1 year, if we wanted to, and it sounds like
I think
people
we
are
were
on the
3
fence
meetings
one way.
ago, I'd be all for taking a look at rebuilding and having a new 2-year contract, but this, we've got a deadline coming up fast. I'd rather just continue with a contract that has worked acceptably and then have the next year to be able to put together what we want as a new 2-year contract.
And that is the motion that is out.
That's
and
my logic
seconded.
for the motion.
So are we ready to vote on that motion?
Mhm.
Can you read the motion back, Larry?
You want me to
Yeah, go
well,
ahead.
that's what I'm saying.
Restate the motion.
I would move that this board agree to basically change the name of the current contract so it says SD instead of SU, continuing for another year the current contract, which will end on June 30th, 2018. Under the terms aside from the
Insurance.
reduction of healthcare
And
and
the retirement
the
benefit.
And the retirement benefit.
And I had seconded that.
All right. So, all in favor of rewriting this contract under the SD name, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And does that mean that you are granting the authority to me to change that name and make sure that happens?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. All right.
Just something else on your to-do list.
My to-do list is pages long. It's
Yeah, I know.
getting checked off. Okay, so we're on discussion items. We have next meeting agenda items, but do we have also a retreat date?
We don't, I am still missing 3 people's responses.
I
2
did.
people, Laurie did respond today.
John?
Not either today or yesterday.
You did
Stumbled
respond.
upon
I have
it.
yours. I
I
have
stumbled
yours.
upon it, I was like, oh,
Okay.
shoot.
Okay, so you'll let us know by email?
As soon as I have 2 more people's response.
Okay.
I'll do it.
Not to call you out or anything. He's
If
been busy
I,
with the
can I
policy.
suggest that, because one of those people can be difficult to get responses from, that we ask her to set the date regardless of the second response?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, I just really think that would.
Yep.
Right. Now, this date may actually be prior to our next meeting, no?
No, it looks like the best date is gonna be in like around the 19th of July for most
Okay.
people.
All right. So our next meeting is June 28th.
Yes,
Chromebooks? Wellness?
up to you. A wellness definite.
Well, you
yeah,
said in your
wellness prevention.
superintendent's report the Chromebooks were happening. That's why
Yeah.
I'm saying that. Did you
So
not?
does that mean we'll get some training?
Well, you could get some training on that day. You'd have to come a little early. It depends on what you would like.
Or maybe we get them,
Play with them
see
and then need
what's
trading.
going on, and then discuss
come
at
back and
the-
let us know what you need.
At the retreat, and
And,
if you haven't been able to turn it on before the retreat, we know you need training.
and these are not coming home with us, or they are coming home with us? They are coming home.
So, okay. Anything else that we should be aware of for that one? Okay. Fantastic. Alrighty. So, at this time, I will take a motion to enter into executive session for the purpose of discussing negotiations, the premature disclosure of which would place the board at significant disadvantage.
Boy, all in one
So
breath.
moved.
Second.
Yeah, that's good.
I didn't hear who.
Where are we gonna move?
Going to the
Don't we need to
guidance-
have
the
an
guidance
adjournment
office.
then for this meeting?
I moved and
We
George
don't
seconded.
adjourn, we just go into executive, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are we are actually moving? Oh.